I really don't think our founders sat down and said, we really think corporations should get to spend unlimited amounts of money to fund political candidates.
To understand Citizens United, you kind of have to go back to the law that it is interpreting. So you got to go back to 2002. It's called the 2002 Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, or BICRA, or colloquially McCain-Feingold. That law itself, what it did was it put restrictions on campaign finance. There are these things called independent expenditures, which are corporations or interest groups or PACs or other entities that are not political parties, who are not affiliated with campaigns, who make campaign expenditures on their own, independent of the candidate and their campaign. Fast forward to 2008, and during that campaign, there was a group of Republican-affiliated donors who paid for and created what they call a documentary film. And that documentary film is called Hillary, the movie. And it was, to put it plainly, pretty much like an hour-and-a-half smear piece on Hillary Clinton.
Ruthless, vindictive,
venal, sneaky,
ideological, intolerant.
Liar is a good one.
They created this movie and they wanted to start running it prior to primary elections. And so what did they do? They created movie trailers to run as advertisements. Now, since the movie itself was a documentary, but in effect was basically a hit piece on Hillary Clinton, the Federal Elections Commission stepped in and said, no, this is an independent expenditure, and under McCain-Feingold, you're not allowed to run independent expenditures 30 days before a primary. And so Citizens United challenged the FEC's ruling, claiming that it was a violation of their First Amendment freedom of speech rights. And so it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. They ruled in favor of Citizens United, and they completely wiped out the 30 and 60-day restrictions on independent expenditures.
And so they decided the case based on the First Amendment, and it overturned prior cases that had held that corporations could have more limitations as to how they spend their money. Throughout the majority opinion, they refer to the banning of speech.
The Citizens United decision was a terrific decision because what did it do? It restored the First Amendment political speech rights of Americans.
There was no ban here. It was just that it couldn't be broadcast during a certain time period, it couldn't be broadcast to a certain number of people, and you couldn't have corporations specifically identifying a political candidate to support. The regulations set up under McCain-Feingold, in fact, allowed Citizens United to form a political action committee.
If you listen to the oral arguments for Citizens United, they say the word documentary a striking number of times.
The federal government did not have the right to criminalize this 90-minute documentary. This was a 90-minute documentary.
You can tell he's trying to drive home this point that this is just a film. And that is much easier to interpret as speech, right?
It used to be that the individual voice decided the election. Now, it's who can buy the most time on TV or social media. Yes, SEAL, our association, still lobbies in relation to issues. And there are times when we make contributions to support political candidates. But if we're smart, we split campaign contributions between candidates. Because we can't control who's going to win, and we want to work things out either way. But corporations, like the Koch brothers, on the national level, with billions of dollars to spend, they literally can buy candidates. They can say, we'll elect this guy to get our legislation passed. Corporations are given a blank check to buy who they want.
There is a great opportunity for corporations to buy our politicians. But even if that's not the case, there's an appearance of impropriety. What do we take away in terms of their freedom of speech against what's the risk to our democracy? And what's the risk to taxpayers of having corruption take place in our society because corporations can potentially buy votes?
There's no accountability. They don't have to be accountable for who's giving the money. Even if major corporations funded an ad, all it'll say is, funded by friends of so-and-so. You don't know where the money's coming from.
We have lots of speech taking place where we don't know who's funding it. I think that's very problematic.
Those organizations and their associational rights under the First Amendment are protected.
So you do not have to disclose who belongs or who gives money, correct?
No, and you shouldn't have to.
Nobody knows where the money came from. Nobody has to report anything.
I think we're entitled to know who is funding political speech. When I write a letter to the editor, the newspaper will not publish it without me putting my name on it.
So what do candidates do? They pander to the companies. They convince the companies that they will support the legislation the company wants. It's how you survive, as a candidate. Now it comes down to which candidate sells their soul to the highest bidder.
All you need to say is, we're going to run primary ads against you.
They don't have to tell you that their support is contingent upon your continuing support of their issues. Everybody knows that's how it works.
And there's no bribery, there's nothing illegal there. And you and I as citizens never know that conversation goes on, and we never know, that it influenced their vote.
It is not leveling the playing field in any way. It is giving advantages to the wealthy in that they have the money to broadcast their speech to a much wider audience.
Corporations who don't have the right to vote, who don't serve in the military, who aren't asked to do many things that citizens are asked to do they don't serve on juries. There's a lot of parts of our society that they don't participate in. I find it very concerning.
I think this is a really important issue. I think this is probably one of the biggest issues of our time dealing with the government right now.
I think it's going to take not only individuals, but corporations to say, I'm not going to play this game if there's going to be change.
Our democracy is fragile, but it's only as strong as those of us who choose to support it.